Hi, my name is Danielle Putnam. I'm the president of the New Flat Rate. And today it is such a treat and a privilege to introduce to you Ben Middleton, the National Sales Training Manager for Goodman Amana Daikin.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for having us here.
I'm so glad to have you. Ben's actually joining us from a road show. He is, I could say it so many ways, but correct me if I'm wrong. I feel like you're really educating dealers and contractors all over the U.S. on this road show about how to better prepare for the future. And so today you are in Montgomery, Alabama. Is that correct?
I am. And, there's a lot of changes in our industry coming up over the next couple of years. And we want to make sure that contractors are prepared for all of the government regulations that are happening, which there's quite a few. And then also we see a lot of shifts with consumer behavior in a post-pandemic world. We see a lot of shifts with employee behavior, with the great resignation that you keep hearing on the news and what's happening with employees. And then we see a lot of changes with technology and how businesses can adapt and use that technology to streamline their services and give customers choices on how they interact with that business. And so with all of this change in the air, we thought it would be a great idea to get out and just have conversations with as many contractors as possible and help contractors to prepare for what has happened and what will happen in the future.
Yeah, way to get on the front lines and really get in front of it. I commend you for that. And it's a big deal to go on a road show and actually talk to people, face to face. So thank you for doing that. I know that's exhausting.
Well, it's been very rewarding. It has been a lot of fun just to get out and connect with so many contractors. And it really helps us to keep a finger on the pulse of what's really happening in the industry. So we've really enjoyed the roadshow so far and looking forward to seeing many contractors this fall.
Yeah, so awesome. I'm thrilled that you're doing that. Ben, I heard rumor that you guys have changed your name to Daikin Comfort Technologies. So how does that affect the Goodman and Amana brands, as you're going out and talking to all these contractors? Is it Daikin? Is it Goodman and Amana?
So as a corporate entity, we did change the name to Daikin Comfort Technologies. In the past, we had two separate business units. We had the Goodman business unit and the Daikin business unit, and we've brought those together all underneath one umbrella. But what is not happening is we will not be getting rid of any of the brands. And so you will continue to see Goodman, and Goodman has a great brand strategy and legacy. We've got a lot of great Goodman dealers out there that love the product. We'll continue to have Amana. Amana, again, has a lot of brand recognition with the consumers. It's been a brand that many consumers trust and equate with reliability and with that durability and that American made. And then we have Daikin, which really is about innovation and about helping to inverterize all of North America. And so we'll continue to have the three brands, even though there was a name change. Some of the comfort advisor or some of the territory sales managers that you have, we will see those territory sales managers that may offer multiple brands within a market. And so that'll be more convenient for the dealers that are out there that may have more than one of those brands that they're offering to the consumers. They can now have a single point of contact for sales in some cases. And so that's one of the benefits that will be there. But there's not a lot of change from the dealer and definitely not a lot of change to the consumer as far as what they're going to see.
Fantastic. My husband just remodeled a triplex, and when he was looking at the quote of, what to put in, he says, well, there's this one brand, or I could do these Goodman units. What should I do? I was like, do the Goodman units. So we got these three beautiful Goodman units at our new triplex.
Well, we appreciate your business. That's great. And we love the support New Flat Rate has given us And we love to watch also the new flat rate as you guys continue to help contractors out there, and look
you.
forward to continue to support everything that you guys are doing.
Thank you so much. And actually, that kind of jumps me right into, we have an annual business conference coming up October 3rd through 5th in Atlanta called Business Uncensored. And Ben, I want to thank you and Amanda Goodman and Daikin for your sponsorship. You guys are a sponsor at our event. So thank you so much for that and for your support.
Well, looking forward to it.
I've always been a guy that loves the next latest thing that's coming out. Like, for example, what's the latest technologies that are out there. For us, it doesn't matter we know there's change, there's going to be new technology. It doesn't matter what it is as long as we're a part of it. And so Business Uncensored gives us a chance to meet what everybody else is doing and what's the future hold for us, and I want to be a part of it. When you unwind and relax your mind like that, you get to absorb a lot of stuff. And I know there's going to be a lot of nuggets for me, so I can't wait to go.
Let's talk about the next 3 years, Ben. So as you guys are out and really having conversations with these contractors and dealers, there's quite a few changes that you're talking about to help prepare everybody. So let's start with what's coming first in 2023. The regional efficiency changes, you said, I believe, right?
Yeah, so throughout the recent history, we have seen the federal government, the Department of Energy, come out and increase the energy efficiency standards for the equipment. It's hard to believe, but anytime before 1992, there were no efficiency standards. So manufacturers could make whatever they wanted to make, as long as it cooled the customer's home and did what the manufacturer said it was going to do. That was great. That was wonderful. And then in 1992, we started to have some challenges producing enough energy in this country. And if you remember, there were these rolling brownouts and even blackouts that we were having because the grid really just could not handle all of the new construction. And the other thing that happened was you saw a lot more of the middle class start to put central air conditioning into their homes. And the grid just was not designed for that. And so the federal government came back and said, because we want to make sure that we have our energy independence, which is a big deal. And we want to make sure that we can take care of everybody that's out there. We're going to put these energy efficiency standards in place. And so that's when we got the 10 SEER air conditioners that everybody saw. Then in 2006, they decided to actually increase the efficiency from 10 SEER to 13 SEER. And everybody remembers when we went through that change. And that was a 30% increase in efficiency. And so when we had that increase, that was also a 30% increase in cost on the base efficient units that were out there. And so that was a struggle for a lot of contractors out there to make that jump. But again, it was on the manufacturing side. And so what you saw was a lot of distributors stock up on as many 10 SEER units as they could before the new efficiency standard went into place. And you saw that on the contracting side as well. And many contractors were going into the supply houses and saying, do you have any more of those 10 SEER units in place? And we contractors, we as an industry did the same thing with refrigerants as well. Hey, do you have any R22 units available still?
Yeah, I remember.
And so then the federal government changed again, and they said, we're going to divide the country up into regions. So before, these were always national standards that we had. And they said in the Southeast and the Southwest, we're going to increase the efficiency to 14 SEER. And in the North, they kept it at 13 SEER. And so now we had 3 different regional efficiency standards, and you had to know which equipment you sold in your particular region that you were in. And it became illegal to install equipment that was not rated for your particular region.
Wow.
And then when we come into 2023, on January 1 of 2023, now the federal government has changed. Before, where it was always on the manufacturing side, that you have to, manufacturers are responsible. They're saying contractors are now responsible to ensure that they're putting in the correct efficiency unit for their particular region they're in. And so they were going to raise the Southeast and Southwest to 15 SEER and raise the North to 14 SEER. But then to make it a little bit more complicated, they decided to change the efficiency standards on how we rate the equipment. And so we're moving from SEER to SEER 2.
Okay.
And so, and these are not linear changes, but they're actually changing the way they test the equipment. And so instead of today, when you test equipment, they assume that the ductwork is going to be at a 0.1 or a 0.2 static pressure, which no residential system runs at 0.1 or 0.2. And in fact, if you look at many of the installation manuals and you look at what the blowers are rated for, most of the blowers are designed for a 0.5 static pressure. So you have a 5 times increase in the pressure that you have inside that ductwork, which means that motor is going to have to work harder, which means it's going to drop the efficiency. So now what we have is that new 14 SEER system that you have in the North is actually going to be 13.2 approximately.
Right.
That 15 SEER system that you have in the South is going to be roughly about 14.2. And so when you look at it, the South is going from 14 SEER to 14.2 SEER 2. Just to make everything really clear and, and easy for everybody to understand.
Right. That's a lot of work for a little tiny bit.
It seems like it, but it is actually, it's about a 7 to 8% efficiency increase that we'll see. And so that's not insignificant.
That's right.
And so we see this increase across the board of about 7 to 8%. The interesting thing is about 70% of the equipment produced in North America today, and this is all manufacturers, is not going to qualify for the new energy efficiency standards. So every single manufacturer is working really, really hard to get the new units ready. We just released all of our specifications. And so if you go to any one of our websites, you can see the equipment specs that we have available. And so contractors can start looking at that. But if you're in the Southeast or the Southwest, you are not going to be able to sell through what you have in inventory. And so this is where it's different. Come January 1, if you have a 14 SEER system in your warehouse, you will not legally be able to install that piece of equipment in a consumer's home. And, the big question everybody always asks, well, what are the consequences and how do they intend on enforcing this?
Right.
And so you have to, let's talk about enforcement first. The federal government doesn't have enough employees for all of them to go hide in bushes and wait for contractors to install an air conditioner. So you're not going to have people from the Department of Energy policing this. What they have done is they've created a hotline, much like they have through the EPA with refrigerants. And if you had an employee that was disgruntled and just not happy
Yeah.
with you. Maybe you have a customer that says, hey, I don't think you're putting in the correct system. That homeowner could potentially call on you. You could have a competitor doesn't like your bid that says, hey, I know that system's not matched the way that it's supposed to. They could call the hotline
Yeah.
on you. And so, or even a building inspector that doesn't have a great relationship with you. Maybe they're looking for a way to get
Yeah.
back at you. So there's a lot of different ways that this hotline could be used. Not to say that it will be used. And if a contractor has somebody call, then the Department of Energy can come over to the contractor's shop and they can ask to look at the contractor's records of all their installs. And this is the really important piece, is by law, a contractor is required to keep records of all of the installs they've done for 3 years. And so they could come in and say, hey, can you, and distributors are required to keep it for 48 months, and manufacturers are required to keep all of their records for 5 years. So they could start at the manufacturing level, and they could ask us as a manufacturer, hey, just curious, what distributor did you sell this model number to? And we would give the information, and then they would ask that distributor, what distributor did you sell, or what contractor did you sell this model and serial number to? And the distributor would give the information. And now they're going to the contractor and it's saying, what home did you put in this model and serial number?
Right.
Now show me the coils model and serial number and the air handlers model and serial number, and what is the AHRI number?
Oh, wow.
If the contractor doesn't have all of those records, then they're in violation of the Department of Energy's code, and they could be fined. And so that's where, there's a lot of stuff as an HVAC. If HVAC contractors didn't have enough, now we've got to keep records of all the installs. We got to make sure everything has an AHRI number. And if we don't have those records available, now we become vulnerable. And so that's part of the reason why we started to do the roadshow, just to make sure everybody's aware of the risks and what their responsibilities are.
Yeah. Wow. Thanks so much for sharing that with us. So if somebody does have a warehouse full of those units that they can no longer install, is there any kind of a swap back program where they could swap them back?
So as a distributor, region by region, we're working with contractors to help them be able to do that. We have the great ability with our company-owned distribution, and many of the independents that we work with too have locations in both the Southeast, Southwest, and the North. And so in the North, they're allowed to continue to sell through. And so we'll be able to shift product up into the North region, and the North can continue to sell through the product. And so that's kind of the outlet that you have there. And so it's real important to know which efficiency region that you're in, and then how you're going to plan accordingly as you look to stock up for equipment as we move into the fall and into the winter.
Right. Yeah, that at least helps. But being educated on this is really important, maybe more than ever before.
Right.
As we go into the new year. So then let's talk about the following year. In 2024, there's some consumer safety changes coming up.
So
what's that look like?
So it's interesting, as a manufacturer, you have all of these changes that are coming back on us. So in 2024, and we're making all of these changes with our units in 2023, just because it did not make sense to have to, make changes year after year after year. But so there's some changes as far as the coating on the wires. They wanted to make sure that that they were less flammable, the outside coating on the wires. But the big change is they required us to tighten up the spacing on the tops of our air conditioners because they were worried about fingers getting stuck into the top of the units.
Okay.
And so they had us tighten up the spacing. And when you tighten up the spacing on a grill, that restricts airflow. In order to get the heat transfer that we need across the coils, we need to move a certain amount of air across the coils in order to get that efficiency that we're looking for. And so as we redesign the tops to be in compliance with the new standards that they have, and that restricted airflow, we had to do a couple of different things. One, we're going to be putting a Venturi ring around the fans, and that's going to help us to make the fans more efficient as far as moving air through them. And so that's going to help us to be able to speed up the air. And then we are also going to have to be making the units a little bit larger. And so in the past, about 60% of our equipment was on that 29 and 32-inch chassis. And now we're going to see about 70% of our equipment is that we manufacture is going to be on that 36-inch chassis that we have. That may not seem like a whole lot, but it actually has a lot of ramifications. So because of the new efficiency standards, there's some things that you have to plan for with costs. So number one, the components that go into the systems to meet the new efficiencies and with these restrictions that we have are going to be, more costly components that we have. So a lot of our coils today still have pistons in them to get the ratings, and we're going to see a lot of our coils go to factory installed TXVs. You're also going to see larger compressors that can hold more refrigerant so we can get more heat transfer. And so that's going to add cost to the systems. And then you're going to see we're going to have to do different, more efficient motors in the outdoor units to move that air and make sure that we don't draw as much electricity through those units. There's going to be more commodities. The units are going to be bigger. But probably the single biggest impact we're going to have is on the logistics side. So if you just think from a warehousing standpoint, we can carry 6 of the 29-inch units that we have today. And we can carry 2 or 4 of the 32-inch units, and we can carry 2 of the 36-inch units. So when you look at this, what you're going to see is we're going to have more people in the warehouses just to move equipment around and to be able to move the same volume of boxes as we've moved in the past. You're also going to see when we look at loading equipment on a truck to move the same amount of boxes from our distribution facility in Waller, Texas, out to the distributors. What we were able to move on one trailer load is now going to take 1.5 trailers. We already know there's a shortage with truck drivers and containers. And so this is going to add cost to the logistics of getting the equipment to the distributors. The distributors that already had full trucks going out to contractors are going to have to buy more trucks. They're going to have to get more drivers locally. And so all of this is going to add into the cost as we move into 2023 because of all of these efficiency changes. So these are some of the consequences, again, that, we just want to share as much information as we can. And actually, I think homeowners want to hear this. And so when a contractor knows the story, and the homeowner is saying, why are prices going up? Inflation is crazy. They can come back and say, here's all of the consequences and the things that we're dealing with, and this is why. And then, so it's not somebody just sitting in an ivory tower saying, I think I'll raise my prices today.
Right.
There's real things that are going into this that are trying to figure out. And so as the new SEER 2 equipment becomes available, we are going to see even more price increases than what we've already seen. And so, and these are the reasons why.
Mm-hmm. Ben, have you guys seen, or do you have data yet on any consumer pushback for the prices? Has there been any so far, or too early to tell?
Well, I think it's no secret that there's been a lot of price increases in the industry over the last year and a half or 2 years here. And so we've seen that happen. What I can say is, air conditioning, furnaces and air conditioning, 80% of consumers that buy furnaces and air conditioners, they buy in a reactive mode. There's not a whole lot of people that are sitting there and planning and saying, I think I'm going to buy a brand new furnace or air conditioner today.
Right.
Typically, it's the situation of I have no heat, I have no cooling. It's 100 degrees out or it's 0 degrees out.
What am I going to do?
And I need to get something done now. And so this is not a product that consumers typically shop. It's more of a reaction to a situation that they're in. And the tech's out there delivering the news. Okay, I think it's time to get a new system. There's not much we can do with this particular system. And so it really comes down to affordability. It's not the price. And so I think it's going to be even more important for every contractor out there to make sure that they lead with financing and make sure that they're saying, hey, this is the cost for our system. We can get you into this system for this much per month. That's going to be very, very important as we move forward, because it's not the price, it's how do you make the system affordable for the homeowner so that they can take care of the situation that they're in. And so financing is going to be very, very important moving forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. We had a press release go out yesterday announcing our partnership with Optimus Financing.
Okay.
So we were really excited about that. And a conversation I've been having lately, we'd been looking at some buying trends. And from what we've seen, to your point, I love that you say that it is a reactionary moment. And even in those reactionary moments, we're seeing, because with the new flat rate, we sell with a menu. And always, and even today, 80% of these homeowners are still choosing higher options. And so their buying behavior, although inflation and everything really hasn't changed, they still want what they want. But now, because everything's so much more expensive, offering financing is more timely than ever really on that. So we're excited to be working with you guys, Goodman and Daikin, and with Optimus to be able to, make sure that we can help offer more options for people, because they're still going to buy it, and they want to spend more, but they've got to be able to afford it. So I totally agree with you. Financing is going to be so imperative.
So all of those changes are going into effect on January 1st, 2023, and those are all the kind of the headwinds that we see for the industry.
2025. Let's talk about year 3 from now.
So in 2025, originally it was going to be 2023, and then the federal government pushed it back. But we've been looking at refrigerants for close to 100 years now. The federal government has been regulating the refrigerants that can be used for comfort cooling inside a residential space. And the reason for that is, again, going back to consumer safety issues. And so if you take a look at the very first refrigeration systems that were developed, you had alcohol used as a refrigerant, you had ammonia used as a refrigerant, and you had ether that was used as a refrigerant. And everybody's familiar with all three of those. Some of the people on this call probably have even worked with some of those as refrigerants. And they're all really efficient. They do a great job of the amount of BTUs that each of those liquids and when they change from their liquid to gas phase can carry. But the challenge was when you got a leak with any one of those three, there was consequences. So with ether and alcohol, they're highly flammable. And so you had fires and property damage that was actually associated with those.
Mm.
And then ammonia, when you had a leak on ammonia, we actually had fatalities that were associated because it's toxic.
Yeah.
And so the government came back and said, we're going to create a rating system for refrigerants. And if it's A, then it's non-toxic. If it's B, it's toxic. And they said you can't use anything that's toxic inside of a residential space for comfort cooling.
Okay.
And so that was no longer allowed. And then for flammability, they said 1 is going to be non-flammable, 2L is slightly flammable, 2 is flammable, and 3 is highly flammable. Well, alcohol and ether were highly flammable. So they decided that, you can't use these refrigerants because we've got property damage that's associated with this and fatalities. And so they outlawed the flammable refrigerants that were out there. So then we, as an industry, was shifted to R11 and R12. Again, very efficient refrigerants. They did a really good job. Good news was non-flammable and it was not toxic. So it was an A1 was the rating for that particular refrigerant. And so we started to use that, and then they started to do some research. If you remember back in the 60s and 70s, they started looking at this ozone layer, and they started to become concerned with some holes that they were seeing in the ozone layer and it thinning out. And the ozone layer, we know, protects us from all of those harmful radiations that are out in space. And so it's kind of like this shield around the planet that keeps all life on the planet safe. And so there was a lot of concern with that. And so scientists started looking at what things impact the ozone layer. And they saw a lot of the chlorines that were in a lot of chemicals actually were having this adverse impact. And so in the 1980s, there was the Montreal Protocol that came into effect. And anybody that's taken the refrigeration test memorized all of the dates for the Montreal Protocol, and you remember studying that. But what the ramification was that we went away from the R11 and R12. We went to R22. And then we moved from R22 to 410A because of the ozone depletion value. And they wanted to get the ozone depletion value down to 0. The good news is all of the scientists that look at the ozone layer today actually say the ozone layer is healing itself now that they've gotten done. And so it's getting thicker again. And we're back to where we were in about the 1970s as far as where the ozone layer was. And so it's interesting when you just look at the impacts that we can have as a society when we do put these types of rules into place. Well, then came along the Paris Accords and the Paris Agreement, and the United States and 180 other countries signed on to this that said, hey, we've got a problem. We notice that the temperature of the planet is going up as a whole. And they said, we need to do something about this. And all of the countries made an agreement that we were going to put things in place to not raise the temperature of the planet more than 2 degrees Celsius. We raised the temperature of the planet by 1 degree Celsius. And so the countries all got together again in Rwanda in their capital city of Kigali. And then the Kigali Accords were signed. And we, as a country, decided not to sign on to the Kigali Accords. There were a lot of other countries that did. And one of the things that they talked about was limiting the amount of HFCs that are used. And so what we did do as a country is we created the AIM Act. And the AIM Act is where we're making a commitment to reduce our amount of HFCs that are produced so that we don't hit this tipping point where they don't want to raise the temperature of the planet by more than 2 degrees Celsius. Many contractors have already felt the effects of the AIM Act because the 410A prices have gone up significantly. And that's because they are limiting the amount of these HFCs that can be produced. And so that's having an impact on the cost. Then California and the California Air Resource Board, or CARB, said that they were going to make a ruling that you could no longer use any refrigerants that had a global warming potential over 750. Okay. And they originally had said that they were going to start enforcing that in 2023. And so we started to look at building codes because the only way you could get a refrigerant that would be efficient and be below that 750 was to start considering A2Ls. So that's still non-toxic, but it is slightly flammable. And so what does slightly flammable mean? Slightly flammable means that it will not continue to propagate a flame. And so you have to hold the ignition source to it in order for it to light and burn.
Okay.
And that flame, it will spread horizontally, but not vertically. And so when you think about this, as long as you can remove that ignition source, you're not going to have any problems. And so they've actually been using A2Ls in many other parts of the world for quite some time now. And the good news is, to my knowledge, there's not a single fatality or incident of property damage with the A2Ls that are out there. And so I think that's important to look at and to understand that, okay, we're not the guinea pigs. Right. There are, tens of millions of units that are already in place. And we're not seeing, a whole lot of property damage or fatalities associated with these. So we started to look, and we were the first manufacturer to announce that we were going to go with R32. Daikin's been working with R32 for a long, long time. And in fact, we had partnered with Carrier back when 410A was being produced because a main component of 410A happens to be R32. And so 410A is a blend. The nice thing about R32 that we really like is it's a single component refrigerant. And so whenever you have a blend and you have more than one component to that chemical compound that you're making, you run the risk that you can have it go into liquid and gas phase at different temperatures and different pressures. And the reason that's a problem, if you have a leak, you could have one component of that chemical compound that you make leak faster than the other chemical component. And so now you really have no idea what you have in your system.
That's imbalanced, right?
And in fact, if you read most compressor manufacturers, will tell you even on a 410A system, if it loses more than 50% of its charge, you should recover all the refrigerant and you should charge from virgin. With a single component, you can always top the system off. And so from a servicing standpoint, we felt like a single component was just a better way to go. Well, as soon as we had announced that we were going with R32, Carrier announced shortly after that they were going to go 454B. And so
Mhm.
this is a difference in the industry now as well. Because in
Yeah.
the past, manufacturers always kind of worked together so that our
Mhm.
industry had one common refrigerant that we were working with. And we looked at R454B and R32. In fact, we've got a great website. If any of your contractors
Mhm.
or anybody watching this wants to go look at it, they can go to r32reasons.com.
Mhm. Okay.
And so we have our 32 reasons why we believe R32 is the best refrigerant to go with. And when we look at it, we don't think global warming potential is necessarily going to be kind of that last thing that they're going to look at. And
Mhm.
so we're really looking further into the future and saying, we think life cycle component performance is going to be really, a big consideration moving forward. And so what that looks at is not just the impact on greenhouse gases from the chemical, but also the impact on greenhouse gases from the amount of energy that system will use over the course of its lifetime. And that's actually the bigger component when we take a
Mm.
look at it. If we're really serious about
Right.
dropping greenhouse gases, then we
Mhm.
have to get units that are going to be more efficient.
Mhm.
And when we look at the efficiency of R32 compared to 410A, R32 is a more efficient refrigerant than 410A, and 454B is less efficient than 410A.
Hmm.
And so what that means, in order to get the same efficiencies, you may have to go with a bigger unit using
Mhm.
410A or 454B, and we may be able to get more efficiency with the same sized unit
Mhm.
by switching to R32. In fact, a lot of our modeling on the bigger equipment, on the chillers and that type of
Mhm.
equipment out there, we see really great efficiency gains just
Mhm.
by changing the refrigerant in an existing system.
Wow.
And so if we can equate that to the residential side of things,
Mhm.
that could have a big impact on the amount
Right.
of greenhouse gases that are going into the atmosphere, because we
Mhm.
still have a lot of energy produced with greenhouse gas production that's out there.
Mhm.
So we looked at all of those different things. The other thing we looked at, R32, because it's already readily available, and it's able to be made by all the manufacturers. We enjoy commodity pricing, where
Mhm.
454B is a proprietary blend.
Okay.
Whenever you hear the word proprietary and you know that you have limited manufacturing capability,
Mhm.
well, just in our current climate, anything that's limited manufacturing capability puts you at risk. And
Yeah, it
so,
doesn't sound like a good solution for long term.
right, so R32 is widely available. And the last time I looked at the pricing, R32 was much less than
Mhm.
a jug of 454B. And so typically about 50% less. And so
Mhm.
we know contractors will enjoy that as well, being able to pass those savings on to their homeowners
Mhm.
and working with their customers. So because it's a single component, because it's been used for a long time, and because it's readily available, those are just a couple of the reasons why we think R32 makes a lot of sense.
Mhm.
And so that's where we've chosen to go.
Mhm.
And, we're watching what the rest of the other manufacturers do and say, but we really do believe that's the right refrigerant going forward.
Mhm.
So in 2021, we released our first ductless units in North America that actually have R32 in them.
Okay.
And so we did our first install in 2021. We've been moving more and more of those ductless units with
Mhm.
R32. In fact, we're getting lots of contractors that are calling us. It's not available in all states yet because there's still some building code hurdles that we have in some states. And so as they adopt more parts of the International Building Code, then we're able to make those R32 units more and more available. And so contractors are starting to do that. And then as we start to get closer to 2025, we'll start getting more unitary product out with R32 in it so that contractors can install and be using the new refrigerants that are out there.
Wow. That's a lot of a lot of change.
Yes,
but,
there's a lot of change on the horizon.
You know what, though? I really appreciate that you put some positive spins on it. You know, at the very beginning, it's easy to feel a little overwhelmed. This is a lot for contractors to be looking out for and protecting themselves and homeowners. But really, you painted the picture that in the end, you know, change can be uncomfortable, but this will be better for everybody. And so thank you for leading the front on that. I know that, you know, there might have been some pushback too, but, you know, it's awesome because in the end, it's going to be better. So it sounds great. I like those ductless products. I think they're awesome.
We continue to see them grow. More and more homeowners are just looking for how can I use more space in my home, especially that we have so many people working from home now. And I think we're going to just continue to see more ductless product. In the end, it's more efficient if you can only heat and cool the spaces that you're using in your home. And so, you know, we all do our part to try to work together as you know, a society in the world today. And so it's going to be fun also just to watch all of the innovation within our industry over the next couple of years. I think there's going to be a lot of really cool new products, different ways of looking at things. And so it's going to be fun to watch all of that unfold.
Yeah, it really is awesome. This is a great place to be and great industry to be in because we are affecting the world. And so it's awesome. Well, Ben, thanks so much for the wealth of knowledge you've shared with us today, for helping to prepare us for the future, what's to come, and to be able to look at it in a positive way, knowing that, you know, we are all going to be able to help make a difference. So thank you for joining me and for being here. Thank you for your sponsorship for Business Uncensored and your support. And yeah, really, really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ben.
All right. Bye.